Okay, so now with the wash completely off, as you can see, you end up with something looking, hopefully, just like that, okay? Now what we've done here is basically get it all off, and then with the darkness that's left over on the cloths, rubbed it around everywhere just to give it a little bit more griming in and everything else like that. And we started doing, as you can see, there's one, there's the other, both out. We've done a bit of test fitting, so we've put the gear in, all glued into place now and put in. I've had to open up the side little holes. There's a little pin and it just sits in there. So we've put that one in there as well. The engine isn't fixed, to be honest, it's just in there at the moment so we can see exactly how it is and everything else. So we just done a little bit of playing, making sure we're all happy of how it all is and everything, and happy with the weathering, because what we need to do is lock that in a minute. So what we're going to do is a standard flat coat right the way over it, which I'll show you when we get around to it. The other things we've been doing is taking care of all the little bits. So here we've got the access, this is the boarding ladders, it's photo etch, very straightforward going together, so we just painted and weathered that in. Okay, this probe we've weathered in as well, still not glued it in because I want to flip this over for doing various things. So having the probe, and to be honest, that's just a little bit of tack holding that in to keep it out of the way. Now the big thing is getting this wing fold up system and everything in. So when we did the wing section itself, you can probably see we've weathered up down here, very straightforward, that's just a wash. And then what we've done is we've used that grease colour just to give it a hue of, because it would be quite greasy and everything else in there. But you can see it's exactly what we're sort of after. But when you come to make these latch system which goes up, or the hydraulic bar, the big one, it's made up of 4 bits, okay? And you would think it would be somewhat firm and everything in there, but the trouble is when you put it together, which goes something like this, okay? If I just glue this one in, so basically you have the glue, and what you're going to need to do is spot it just on the end just to hold everything in place. You end up with the 2 rams, okay, for both sides, which go on, okay, and that goes in there like that. Then you've got this top plate which is going to go over the top like this, okay. Alright, so you're still thinking, right, okay, that's no problem, just give this a drop of glue, plenty of glue if I'm honest. Alright, I'll just use some tweezers just to pull it together, but you might notice here it's movable, so you've got no way of knowing what angle it should be, because you know, for all we know, you could go in and have it in the the open position just like that. So what I did, come along with it, this is one I did earlier, I've put it into the actual socket itself of where it's got to go, put the wing in, and I let it dry in that position, okay? So you end up with something like this which is good to go and in that position. Otherwise you've got no real idea, and if you've got it slightly not right, it's not going to sit down, because you have got these bars, okay, which go in just down here. And what this one is, because I didn't want to put a hole right the way through it, actually I've just put a little dome in there, okay, and it sits in there just like that, so it's enough to hold the weight, and then the wing goes onto this part here, which is, say, no problem at all. But if you didn't know, you could have all types of trouble with it. So we've done that. So what I'm doing right now is just going around taking care of some of the small little bits. Now, one of the hardest parts you can come up with is doing things like this. Now, this is all that red line that goes around the outside. And for years, I used to do things of masking up, painting it, spraying it, hand painting it, getting a fine brush and putting it all the way down there and things like that. But then you would always get it on the outside and you wipe it off, and then you get staining of red because it's very strong, okay? And then one day, literally, I just thought about it is to just use a Sharpie. So I bought one of these mini little Sharpies, okay, and if I can just find a part, should have another one around here somewhere. This one will do. So what we've got here is just a door. So if you use the Sharpie, so if you use the edge of it and go along, because it's painted, just go very slowly. If you go too quick, what happens is it doesn't really soak in, and it dries really light, but you can give it a couple of coats as is required, okay, and don't do what I've just done and slip. But it goes on there just like so, and you have total control over it. And what you can do is you can use the ridge on the inside and just travel very, very slowly, okay? And if you take your time, you can actually fill it in just like so, okay? But the secret to this is to give it a couple of coats and let it dry in between each one, otherwise it goes very, very light coloured. Okay, so that's just on there like that. Do the edge, And there we go, that's the red work all on there, just like that. So we've done the same on all the doors and just whipped around. To be honest, these have all just had a second coat, but as long as you take your time with it. We do this one here, it's a bigger one. So using the side of the Sharpie for doing the edges, okay. Just like that. Then we can come in and do the inside. Just like so, really straightforward. Okay, and then down here. So, and what you'll find is it will go over almost anything. It doesn't matter if it's got paint or it's got the wash on there or all those things like that. But what you do is just take your time and go through, because if you do it too quick, it doesn't flood enough of the ink down onto it. You'll end up with sort of a pinky colour rather than a red. Okay, but as I said, you come back about an hour later, once it's totally dry on there, and you can give it another coat. On there, just like that. And that's the easiest and quickest way to do doors. Okay, and there we go, we've got some grease stains in those ones and everything else, but they're ready for fitting now. There's a couple of little latches and things like that I've got to go on there, but it's well worth getting them done now. So having all of those done, and we've got the nose wheel, that really is going to get us up in there and everything else like that. So what we're going to do now is just whip this over to the spray bay, give it a flat coat, okay, nice long distance away, flat coat right over it. Okay, we can let that dry then completely overnight, and then we can really start to bring this together. Okay, so temporarily just over here in the spray bay, because obviously doing a big area like this, we need the extractor. Going to do something a little bit different this time. This is Tamiya's new XF56, sorry, 86, XF86. Okay, there we go. Okay, going 3. Okay, moved over here, a temporary camera angle for the spray bay. All we're going to do is put down the flat coat. Now, traditionally, I might go along, and we've used polyurethane flats, Vallejo ones recently. We've used everybody's from Hannah and everything else. Tamiya have brought out a flat clear. Now, this is not to be confused with their flat base, which I can't see on my rack, although I have got some somewhere. Flat base is something completely different. Many of you, accidentally, I think a lot of A's, and naively, because you haven't read about it yet, spray it on your models. Now, don't panic, because we've all done it, and I did it as well, because you think, oh, it's flat, you mix it with some thinners and you put it on. No, this is actually to be added to paint to make it go even more dead flat, okay? This stuff, Tamiya XF86, is flat clear, which is a flat coat properly, so you can use this one. Now, I haven't used this before, and to be honest, I have tested it on some black work. You might remember this from when we were doing gloss works and things like that. I've actually sprayed it on to see how flat this actually is. So these were gloss triangles, and I've done some areas down in here just to see how good it was, and it did work really, really well. So I'm hoping it will give us a nice effect here. Usual thing with all flats, don't put too much of a heavy coat. You can spray this neat as you would any other Tamiya pot like this, acrylic. But if you do, it has to be a light coat, and that's it. If you're going to put down quite a sustained coat like we're going to do here, what we're actually do is thin it a little bit. Not tons, but a little bit. This way you'll prevent getting whiting. So what happens is if you put it down, it's too thick, you get like a white sort of dusty look to your model, which is obviously is not what we're after. So we're giving it a good old mix. Okay, and we're just going to pour a little bit down into here, just like so. And then all we're going to do is do not quite a 50-50 mix. This is probably more along the lines of like 2/3 of the flat to 1/3 thinners. I'll actually even use their thinners, which would be a bit of a novelty. So it's X20A going in there. Remember, if you're mixing up colours like this, make sure you've got a clean brush. Don't use something that you've had a colour on it, otherwise you're going to tint the thing, especially like I did the other day when I used a red brush. So what we've got down here, I'm going to flick the extractor on. It's going to get a bit noisy. Just going to put it over as we would normally, checking our flow, all coming through very nice. We're tipping it down the sides. Okay, and then what we're going to do is just lightly misting on a coat. Okay, and we're just going to do sort of 2 coats. Okay, the first one, you go down, give it around about 20 minutes to go off, okay, and then give it a second coat over it. Okay, so we just do it like this. Turn this guy around. But first impressions with this stuff, it's very, very good. It immediately gives you not a dead flat finish, but certainly gives you a more satin to flat, shall we say, which is more what we're after. Okay. That's the first one on. Alright, so we're going to just do it like that, and then what we're going to do is come back a little bit later. I'm going to be about this far away, I'm going to be about 2 foot away, and we're just going to mist on a coat like this. And this will just give us a really dead flat finish to it, just like that. But that's basically the secret to it. Nice way away and let it build up gently. Don't put down too heavy a coat, otherwise you're going to get that white chalky effect to your model and everything else like that. But really happy. It does tend to be really good stuff, this. As I say, I've tested it before, chucking it over this because it's a brand new sort of product to me, and I really, really like it. It could be my flat, of choice from now on. Okay, so flat coat been drying completely overnight. Okay, really happy. That stuff is absolutely brilliant. Which is find out where it is. Here it is, which is this Tamiya XF86. Really nice. The great thing I prefer about it to perhaps using the polyurethane, which has been my one of choice before, is it dries pretty quick. You know, the polyurethane tends to be a bit tacky for a couple of hours. Other people's gloss coats, things like that, tend to take a long time to go off. This stuff, to be honest, I got it out of the spray bay, brought it over here, 10 minutes later, handling it and testing it and things like that. I was playing with the wings and that just to see how they came out. You can probably see, like, what you have to appreciate here is we've got these huge studio lights to illuminate all of this. What that does is cause a massive amount of glare. So when you've got a situation where this may look a little bit satin to you, trust me, as I'm looking at it, it's more like flat here. So any type of glossiness will be reflected tenfold, and as you can probably see just by looking at it, and down here on these wings, they are very nice, and it is a nice even non-white coat. I gave these wings quite a heavy go with it, to be honest, and there's just no hint of it whatsoever. They also, which was quite a nice touch, went around, as you can see, and we did this guy. Now you might remember when we did the nose cone, it was very glary on camera. You can see it's knocked that back quite a bit, and you know, looking at them now. But what it does do is give it great texture. It's a very nice texture to work with the wash, because then when you come along with the clay wash and you're whacking it down, it gives it a very, very nice even coat to stick to. So what we did, we re-washed a couple of parts on this, just to go around and give them a little bit more of effect, and it worked really, really well. So I do highly recommend the Tamiya stuff, and I'm probably going to be using that from now on. Now, big thing is we unmasked the canopy, crystal clear still, which was always the problem. One of the major drawbacks when you come into doing something like this is that you basically mask it all up, you install that windscreen, you know you're happy, and then you've got to pray to God you get no overspray in there, or where you've glued it down it doesn't come up the windows. So what we're going to do now is the old test bit. So to be honest, all we do, we're just going to come along and we're going to score gently the actual masked areas. Now the idea with scoring them is that it makes a clean cut, so you don't get any peeling, because if you put too many coats of paint on them, what can happen is you get a build up, and then when you go to remove the mask, you end up peeling the paint. And to be honest, it happened on a few builds back, if you remember, if you're following, that we actually had that happen to us when we did the F-117 stealth fighter. I peeled it back and unfortunately we took it all off. So by running a blade round, and you're not gouging down here, all you're doing is making sure that it's clear, that when we come in we know we'll all be good. So moment of truth, drum roll, because this is where you find out if it's okay. So we're just going to grab a corner, and as I say, there's quite a lot of paint down here, okay, and we're going to peel up. Now he says before he does it, it's very hard to get hold of this because it's got a lot of paint on, it's actually preferring to tear. Okay, so we've got this guy here, and then we're going to peel. And amazingly, apart from we've got a tiny bit down there, we have a crystal clear part still, which is always the worry when you unmask. Now there's a couple of things. I can say this now because it looks like we're okay, but if we had have fogged up and we suddenly had a lot of problem going on under here. It'd be alright if I could get this tape off. The great thing is, because we used a PVA glue, it is really easy to work with. Sorry, this is fighting me somewhat. There we go. But you've used a PVA glue, what you can actually do is slip a blade around there and get it all out, okay? And just literally eke away at it and then slide it off, clean it up, polish it up from the inside and reseat it. And you shouldn't have too much of a problem then. So what you want to do is grab hold of the tape rather than the actual scratch the plastic, if you know what I mean. Okay, so we're just going to pop this guy in here. The last moment of truth. Okay, so we just got this top one to do. To be honest, I love this bit because this means we're getting to the part where everything's going to come together now. We've done all any painting and spraying and heavy weathering. We can come along with light weathering as we're going to do in a moment, but this means we're pretty much to the clean bits of the job and putting together. So there we go. Hopefully you can see that. We have a very, very nice, very clear canopy area. So what that will do, sorry, this is just me wanting to fiddle now, okay, is come along, we can pop our ejector seats in and seat them in. 1 and 2. Get them in, seated in, so they make sure they're in the tabs. Okay, then we can grab our canopy set. Just say I've got a little bit of tack down there, we'll fix it properly when we come to it. But there we go, and that gives us, hopefully as you'll see, a beautiful clear canopy work. And that is what we love about this. This is the bit where you're sort of in there, but that's lovely and clear. We have got a tiny fleck of something down there. So what we'll do, using a clean brush, we'll just try and flick this guy out. What we'll do, we just use a bit of air, make sure you've got nothing else in there. That's him out. But there we go, that's that cockpit now, looking really, really good. Really happy how that's come out. Now, since we're talking about clear parts and everything else, what we can do is start adding the lights. Now, there's no problem with that. What we've done already is paint them up. One of the biggest problems I used to have when I was modelling is patience. And the biggest one used to be doing things like lights, because what I'd end up doing is putting the lights on and painting them and everything else, and they hadn't gone off. And then you touch it, so you're moving your model, you lean it against you, you come away, and then you look at it and you get green spots and red spots all over, or you've got it on your hands, things like that. What I tend to do now is this. So what we've got here is the actual clear parts pre-painted on the sprue. Okay, so we've got these red ones, these are all done, and they're only painted from the rear. These edge ones, as you can probably see here, they are just painted on the inside edge. So if we just do the wing ones, what we'll do, we just snip these nice and cleanly off of the sprue. Okay, now these are a little bit horrible because they're attached on the glass part on the outside. I would prefer not to see that. So what we're going to have to do is just clean these up just a little bit. But you might be able to see in here we've painted the edge which is going to go into the hole, not the clear part. So when the clear part's laying flat on you, now we can actually see that, you can see through it, but when you're looking from the side you can't. So what we've got here is our polishing sponge. So we're just going to have to come in here and use the polishing sponge. Okay, and you can wet it just to polish it in. So you're just using the blue side to make it nice. Okay, and as I say, it's one of those real pain things. I would prefer not to see it. And then just come in with your white side just to make good. And if you have got a small little nick in it still, like we've got there, we'll just use our black one in there. Okay, back in with the white. With the blue, sorry, that's better, and then in with the white. Okay, now you've got to get rid of all that residue because you need it all to be nice and clear. So make sure you sort of wet it, clean it all up. Okay, you have to do the same with all of them, unfortunately, which is a bit of a pain. and then what you can do is glue it down. Now, good tip for you is to thin micro clear when you're doing things like this, because the grip capability of this stuff is absolutely sort of legendary. It's really, really good. It's never going to fall off, and by having it thin, it will self-track all the way around and fill in all the gaps and everything else and give you a far nicer joint. So what we want to do is first of all test fit it to make sure we're happy of how it is on there, so making sure it's round the right way. We come in really happy how that is just down there like that. It's a beautiful join. So what we're going to do is just going to grab a clear bit just up here, a tiny drop of water, literally a drip, like that, and then we're going to need a brush, so we just grab a cleanish brush. Okay. And similar to how we did the cockpit with putting on that front canopy, we're just going to thin down a drop, okay, and you want it to be the consistency of just under sort of double cream, sorry, a single cream, okay, so it's got enough for the capillary action to start running around like that. So we're in there to start with, so all we're going to do is just going to put in a tiny little drop just around. That's enough to grip it, to hold it in place. Okay, make sure you're all in the right direction. Okay, push it into position so it's all sat in very nicely. Okay, then you can grab a bit on a brush just like this, and you can go around and literally brush it right over the top, and it will track and guide itself back in, which is the beauty about this. Okay, and it will sit on top of it. Okay, if you know what I mean, it's sort of floating, and as it dries it will pull back and give you a very nice crystal clear finish. Okay, but that is the secret with it, just taking your time, a little bit of patience, okay, and that will go in. Also, because it's thinner, it won't take very long to go off at all. But what you want to do now is leave it to one side and forget about it. So we've got a couple of bits to go on. We've got to do the nose wheel. We've got this area down here, so we've got obviously a light lens to go in. We've just done silver in there. We've got the red one to go on, and we've got those. We've got the green to go on the other wing. We've also got the red one here. That's going to go on one of the plates. I think it's one of these guys that go on the belly of it, just off to one side, so we can store all of them, and then we can get on with putting the wing section onto this one and getting all those latches and the bits and pieces done like that. Okay, so now we've got it upside down, purely because we need to get all the belly parts in there. We need to detail up the engine and really start to bring it together, because that's all the work done, if you like. So we're just going to add some further weathering, some little bits and pieces, some little reference shots that I've got, which I'll show you in a moment, to sort of add a little bit of depth and go. But as you can probably see down here, even with these engines in, it looks quite nice, but you might be able to see just here, we've got this line. What that is that shrinkage we were talking about, and I've had a little rub. Luckily for us, what we can actually do is cover this area up. So what we've got is this plate. Now, you might remember we've got a seam line running down here, and we filled this area, to be honest, this entire back area, quite extensively to hide it. But even though you can pop this on, it's still a brilliant fit. We've got a little bit of trimming to do, an edge to do on there, but what it does is hide that entire area. So what we can do, if I just move this around, what I'm doing is I'm to clear a bit of room, because we're a little bit bigger than I ideally would have hoped. So if we just swing this round so I can see it a bit better on camera. So what we need to do is fix this in. Now, the engine itself is a little bit of movement in here. I don't think it's too much of a problem, because obviously it's all going to be held in, and what we're going to do is a little bit of further weathering to it. But just putting it in, it all seems to be okay. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of a twofold. We're going to use a little bit of super glue for doing this, and then also we're going to use thinned PVA glue. Now, the idea with using thin PVA glue is that it will just help secure things better, so we don't have that shock problem. So all we're going to do for the moment, I'm just going to take a little bit of super glue, or CA glue, okay, and we're just going to run it down the seams of everywhere that's going to be sort of joined up. A little bit of a wipe. Now, we are going to weather this quite heavily around this belly, because I've got some shots which I'll show you, which show these getting quite a nasty bit of life here. Just remember, with your CA glue, try not to get it on anything that's going to fog up. So we've got this plate on the back, okay, so all we're going to do is, if you insert it this corner in first, you'll find it all drops in and lines up. Okay, and there we go. We're just going to pop that on. It needs a little bit of a squeeze just to hold it in there. I don't know if I can get a peg to bite. Actually, I think we may be able to just catch one on there and just nudge it in. But you can see, considering we had that little bit of trouble when we were, you know, manoeuvring it around and everything else like that, actually gone in there really, really well. So what we do, just grab some more glue just on this edge. Now you can make a decision, if you are following mine to the letter, exactly on how many access panels you want open or closed. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of kicker. Just remember, kicker will soften paint. This particular kicker, the Vital Bond, I like it because you can spray this over everything and it won't affect anything at all. But certainly just don't put your finger in it, because what will happen is you will peel it off. You will literally rub it down to plastic. So I say, don't worry too much if you get a little bit of white fogging going on in here. Okay, so now we can let go. And it's got it. And you might be able to see it's continuing this continuation, which way you can see it, of this grimy type effect which we did with the wash, and a little bit of sort of pre-shading and post-shading down on there. So hopefully I'm thinking we can take this off. But that covers that back of the engine. Now, do you want the entire engine to show? Okay, bearing in mind with this one we're going to have it, this one is going to be on this outer pylon just here, and it's going to be hanging something like that right on this pylon as if it's looking in maintenance. So perhaps they would have opened up everything, or do you want to put that other one on there? So grabbing the one it is, if you do want it on there, obviously then this one fits on just like this, okay, and you can have it just with this part showing. Personally, I think we're going to have this one all unwrapped and have it open, okay, because this particular one I don't think is on a swing set, because unless it drops down the middle, I'm not sure exactly how this one opens up, because I haven't got a reference shot to show me this one if it swings towards this way. If it does, obviously it's going to be up against the gear, or I've got probably a better feeling it's going to come this way. Or when you look at it, you might see there's a panel line down here. I'm not even sure if it is this entire panel. Obviously Trumpeter have made it in one, okay, that goes across. Because there's a little bit of uncertainty there, I'm going to basically leave it.